logo?
It's only out there like once a year.
Well, I've gone to Bobby now. Yeah. Okay. And how great is that?
So you guys will want to make. Yeah, I heard that you guys should retire. Yeah.
If I look like a then I probably should.
Should this be on the right or the left? I think it's on the left.
He did, and then the other stuff.
Yeah.
Dr. Ray.
They're all giving away to brand new stores that we have.
There was something else that shop.
Yeah, if we're all on the same page.
I know. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jasmine Jones, your president for GASSA this year. I just want to welcome you all to our meeting. We have a great session coming up today with ProRize, and I also want to thank our sponsors, which is Easy Storage Solutions as well as Universal Storage Group, and I have Sarah Beth come up here in just a moment to give us a blurb about Universal. I just want to remind you to please remember to renew your membership if you haven't done so, or join our organization. Right now we have a $150 rate, and it will carry you through December. And our next meeting is going to be in Columbus on September 7th, and the title of the session is going to be Making HR Work for You. We're extremely excited about our upcoming joint conference and trade show in Greenville, South Carolina on October 20 through the 22nd. And I definitely hope to see you there. You can register today, or you can also go online and register. So visit gassa.org for our 2019 member directory, newsletters, lease updates, and more. And just a quick reminder that the 2021 board member nominations are open. We are looking for owner, operators, and associate vendors, and we do have forms for those if you want to nominate someone here today before you leave. And also just a reminder that we are taking nominations for manager and facility of the year as well. We plan on giving those awards out in October at the South Carolina, Georgia conference. So please make sure to get those nominations in. If I could have all of our current board members to please stand. So if you have any questions about the conference, the organization as a whole, please feel free to ask any of these board members here, any questions that you may have, or any concerns or suggestions. Do we have any first-time attendees today?
Yes.
Please stand. Hello.
What would you like me to say?
Your name, give us an introduction of who you are, who you with.
Okay, my name is Marcel Long, and I'm new to the industry.
Welcome, thank you for coming. We hope to see you again. Thank you. Are there any other first-time attendees today? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so if Sarah Beth can come up. before I hand everything over to Jim to introduce our speakers, that would be great.
Jasmine says I didn't need the microphone.
There's a clicker right there on the.
There's too many things. All right. So most of you already know me. I'm Sarah Beth with Universal Storage Group. So I'm gonna make this short and sweet and get to the highlighted parts. How do I? Got it. So for the people who are new, here's a few of our numbers from the last year. So we did 27 cents cost per square foot for our managed facilities and marketing and advertising. So if you go back and look at your numbers like Ann says and start dividing and adding and subtracting and see what yours are, and if you come in more than that, I'll be more than happy to help you and answer any questions that you may have. We have a 91% closing ratio for our walk-ins. So, you know, if you'd like me to come secret shop your facility, I'm more than happy to do that. No charge, I'm always here for you. But I love secret shopping people, and then I'll give you kind of a synopsis of how they did and what they need to work on and try to get your closing ratios up as well. We're going to go through this. Here's some of our numbers for Q2 and how we did in same-store sales increase and net operating income. As you can see, we happily beat the REITs again. The only place we didn't was in net operating income against Extra Space this past time. And I believe this is only the second quarter in 4 years that we've been measuring, 4 or 5 years now, that we have lost to somebody. So not quite sure what happened there, but we'll fix it for next quarter. We've won 11 Facility of the Year winners. So what Jasmine was saying about nominating your facilities, if you have one or if you know of somebody, please have them try to fill this out and get it in by tomorrow night so they can have Facility of the Year. It really is a big honor for your owner or your friend to go up there and get, you know, their award and all. And you can see we have our newsletter on your table, and we actually won Facility of the Year and Design Store Pro in Athens last year. And it won, and there's a whole big article on the front, so if you're a little confused as to how to write up whatever you need to write up and get it into Samantha, just look at what I did and copy it. It's fairly simple. It doesn't have to be extravagant. And then we won, this year, we won Best Manager Training in the ISS Best of Business for the 7th year, so we are very proud of that. And that has to do, again, go back to Manager of the Year. We had Vanessa won Manager of the Year a few years back, and you know, it's a great honor for your manager to come to the award ceremony and be with all the owners and all the potential owners and vendors and go up there and receive their plaque and get their picture taken. So whether or not you think it's a big idea or a great idea to get it in, write that paragraph blurb about what they've done and, you know, how they've increased sales or obstacles they've overcome or what your occupancy is now versus, you know, before they got there and such, and nominate that person, because, you know, they don't get to come to all the fun stuff all the time, and it really does make a big difference for them whether or not you see it. So here's a few of our new facilities. Actually, this one's sold, but it's Red Carpet, and this is one that Ann designed for Facility of the Year. This is one of our branded stores. And then a conversion, so we converted 14th Street, and this is what it looks like now. And iStore, the iStore conversion. So all of these are designs that Ann has done or been part of. So, you know, aside from management, we're here for any design services you may have. If you just want to add on some square footage, or if you want to change your office, Michael knows about that. Call us up and we'll help you redesign that. We have all sorts of a la carte services, so anything you can come up with besides design development, feasibility, education, management, consulting, you know, I'll go just about anywhere and do just about anything. So, and typically, like next week I'm going, there's a lady that called us and she is not ready for management and cannot afford management or consulting, but I'm gonna go spend the day with her just to look around her property and explain what she can be doing to eventually be able to afford consulting and management, and I go there for free. So if you have any questions, please call me. you know, or if you want me just to come out for a couple hours and chat or whatever it may be, one of us on our team will be happy to do that. So there you go, that's us. Oh, wait. And owners, vendors, if you haven't gotten my email or you've ignored my email, now I have you in person. We really need more auction items for the silent auction in October. I was a little waylaid with the accident and the neck surgery, so I'm a little behind, not too far behind, but I would love to have some more stuff. So anything you can give $50 value or more, just my cards are on the back table. Just get with me and I'll email you the form, and I just need the form filled out. You don't have to send it to me, just bring it when you come to the conference if you're coming. If you're not, then go ahead and email it to me. But you know, this year we're doing it joint with South Carolina, so it's Let There Be Mom and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta again, so the more money we can raise, the better for everybody. Please, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Just to piggyback off of Sarah Beth one more time about the Manager of the Year. Empowered people empower people. So you definitely can build morale with your managers and your team as a whole by at least submitting their names, and hopefully they'll end up being the winner, but that's pretty important. So please, please, please make sure you get those nominations in. So now, Jim, if you'll come up. Jim Berry is going to introduce our speakers for today. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jasmine. All right. So raise your hand if you have ever heard of the Nobel Prize. All right, pretty good. Raise your hand if you know a Nobel Prize winner. Raise your hand if you know a Nobel Prize winner. Pretty empty, okay. So now raise your hand if you have ever heard of the Franz Edelman Prize. So the Franz Edelman Prize is essentially the Nobel Prize in data science. It's a global competition. It's been around for about 50 years. The previous winners include folks like the FCC, UPS, CDC, General Motors, Motorola, and we're honored to have here a winner of the Franz Edelman Prize in 2017 for data science. They are the only revenue management team globally to ever win this, and they're also the smallest company to win, as you could hear from the companies I just listed off. Their customers include MGM, Caesars Palace, Hotwire, Equity Residential or Avalon Apartments, Safeguard, CubeSmart, Easy Storage, Simply Storage, Jenkins, Guardian, and they have a number of customers worldwide as well in the storage industry. So they cover a wide variety of industries, bring up a huge breadth and depth of knowledge into the field of revenue management, and most recently have come into the storage world. So we're honored to have, you know, what is truly one of the greatest minds in the field of revenue management, not just in the country, but worldwide. And the best part is that their office is literally 2 miles down the road, believe it or not. Dr. Ahmet Kuyumcu, who is a Turkish-born gentleman who will be coming up here speaking, is the founder and CEO. He's responsible for running all facets of the business. He's directed and built profit-generating pricing systems across a broad range of sectors. He's engineered scientific processes for the most successful pricing products in the transportation, travel, media, automotive, and apartment industries. And again, now is in our world. He has a master's and PhD in operations research. He will have Peter Hansen, who's ProRize's VP of Global Customer Success. Peter works with ProRize to help businesses transform their business by leveraging customer-centric pricing to unlock the value of their unique product pricing offerings and ultimately improve the revenue streams. Peter's got over 30 years career in international sales and is also from abroad. He's from Denmark. Just to give you a quick idea of what ProRize can actually achieve, they have achieved 5 to 15% year-over-year revenue growth, which is pretty impressive. So without further ado, I will introduce the gentleman from ProRize.
Thank you, Jim. I didn't know I was that busy before I started telling what actually I was doing. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for coming. Show of hands, how many of you guys attended the SSA last week? Oh, that's pretty good. It's actually interesting because there were 3 different separate sessions on revenue management. We gave a talk, there was another 1-hour talk, and there was a round table. So 3 sessions just at that convention on revenue management, which to me actually illustrates that it is a very, very hot topic in the industry. So I want to thank GASSA for recognizing that and giving us this chance to come and talk to you guys about it. I want to apologize up front that you're going to get a presentation today in the office we call it Dinglish. And we call it Turkish. So if we do say weird things up front here, I apologize up front, because as they said, Ahmed is actually originally Turkish and I'm originally Danish. What we're going to do today is we're going to give you an overview of revenue management. And in the subtitle, which says, excuse me, science of pricing is based on data and facts. And the reason we split that is really that for a lot of people, they say, what's the difference? Isn't that the same? And it actually isn't, because when you look at it, data is what you can get out of all the many facts that are available out there. But there's actually a ton of facts available, not available, there's a ton of facts going on, but you just can't get. Let me give you one example, for instance. When somebody walks into your store and walks out again without renting because they think the price wasn't right, you might not register that. But it is still a fact. But it's not a data. So it's one of those things that there is a difference between those 2 things. And Annette will cover a lot about that. We will talk about what different kind of levels is there in revenue management. Try to give you an idea of where do you think your organization is today and where would you like it to be maybe in the future. We'll also talk about, and Ahmed will get into that in depth, about the complexity in the science behind revenue management, because there's a reason, of course, for that a lot of people has not engaged with this yet. I mean, you guys all know it from the airline industries and from renting cars, and there's a lot of science behind it, but it is very complex, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe that a lot of people don't really do it. Can I put this on here instead, do you think? Will that work? Yeah. Before we do that, I'd like to take you on a little trip first, though. I'd like to take you to an island. Picture that you live on this island now, and it's far away from everywhere else. We have one problem on that island. There's only one hair salon. I know, I could see the panic already. I do apologize. I know there are other people like Vincent who probably guess I don't really care. But there is only one hair salon here, and the owner, she's kind of getting a feel for this monopoly is going on. So what is she doing with her prices? So what I would like you to do now, there's some small pieces of white paper on the tables here. If you just grab one each, piece of paper like that. And on there now, imagine this. Ask yourself the following question. What is the maximum price that I would be willing to pay in this hair salon to get my hair cut before I would start cutting it myself? Repeat the question. How much money would I be willing to pay before I said enough is enough? Do me a favor, on your piece of paper, put an M for male and an F for female, and then just write one number. And Annette would you guys collect those pieces of paper? What's going to happen is that we're going to collect all these. We don't have time to look at all the numbers, but Annette is going to randomly pick about 15 or 20 of these numbers, and a little later in the presentation, we will show you the result of this little survey. So We appreciate that. It's normally very interesting what comes out. Some of us, yes, don't care. And others go, yeah, $500 might still be all right. So let's go to that. Okay. On a serious note, what I would like to do here now is I'd like to look at 3 different versions of pricing or revenue management. 3 different tiers of it, and I'd like for you to kind of look at it and try to decide, where am I, where's my organization, and where would I like to be maybe. Tier 1, you don't have any dedicated person who's responsible for doing pricing. You might set the price once or twice a year, and then this kind of goes to the store manager, or maybe the regional. So you kind of go, well, maybe I should change it a little bit or whatever, but you don't have any structure, you don't have any dedicated person to do it. You make some rules up maybe, once or twice a year, or once a year, or once every 5 years, and say, this is how I'm going to change my price. And the way you set them is whenever you feel like. Whenever you go, darn it, I haven't had anybody come in for 2 weeks, I better lower my price. Or, I wonder what, can I say public storage? I wonder what somebody else is doing down the road, and let me respond to it. But it's like, it's gut feeling. It's kind of like where you're going with it. You might at some time seriously have sat down and said, no, I'm going to do some analysis. I'm going to look at what I have done previously in my last 20 years of experience, and this is what I'm going to follow. And then everybody gets busy, right? The roof falls down. We have a break-in. Nobody's paying their bills. And all of a sudden, these rules start being watered out more and more and more, and we start going back to making shortcuts. And you don't really, even if you try to test it, you try to go, no, I got 3 stores, I got 5 stores. I'm going to see if I do this, that, or that with my 10 by 10 climate control, I'm going to see what happens. That's my decision. I'm the owner. And then the store manager goes, yeah, I know better. Because you're not out in the real world, I am. And then you kind of let them, you don't really reinforce your testing. And finally, at least this is what we see in a lot of medium-sized organizations, top management is not really involved. They look upon this as an operation thing or a finance thing, and they don't really, they got other things to try. They're more worried about what is my building worth and how can I finance it and what's my tax reductions. Important, I don't disagree, but that's version 1. Version 2, and that's probably what I at the moment see most companies that do have some kind of a revenue management system. That is where they are. They have a dedicated pricing staff. They have somebody who's responsible, centralized for setting the prices. But when I say, but it's siloed, that means the revenue management people don't really talk to the marketing people or to the operations people. They don't really go, well, I need more market. They don't use, so to speak, they don't use the data that actually is available in the revenue management side to help the marketing. Let me give you an example. Revenue management system will always say, if I don't get the predicted move-ins that I thought I was going to get, I have to lower my price. But of course, how low can you go, right? The system don't know. You'll just keep going down and down and down and down. In more advanced systems, there will be a communication between the system and the marketing people. Going, hey, wait a minute, in store 1 and 2, we keep lowering price on the 10 by 10s, but nobody moves in. Did you guys forget lead generation? Because don't forget, no revenue management, I don't care who you pick, none of these systems are lead generation systems. We actually had a client at one time that was doing really, really well. He said, man, this is good, I can stop my marketing. No. That's the same as I can get the price of milk right in Publix. That doesn't drive customers. Don't forget, you still got to do, and I'm sure Sarah agrees with me, you still got to drive people to your stores. But the system is based on some solid research and some science in a system like that. It's not just something that we just make up because we feel like it. It's been tested. It uses forecasting. What I mean by that? What I mean by that is it is 10 times, when you set a price for a unit, it's 10 times more important what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks than what happened yesterday. And how many people set their prices on what happened yesterday? Right? With the shoulder seasons that we have, with 40% more movers in April compared to October, November, I want to know in September, well actually already in August, that I'm on my way into that season. Now I don't really care that I'm 97% occupied in August, because I know 2 months from now, if I don't watch it, I'll be 80%. Too late to start responding at that time. Prices are now set weekly or even daily. I love that daily pricing. I understand that from operations viewpoint, sometimes that is difficult. For people who only set prices once a month, I hate to say it, but you guys are leaving money on the table. And then the last part is that we now are getting to get the executives are involved in this. This is, I think, where I would say that the vast majority of companies that do use some kind of revenue management system probably are at today. That's what most companies offer, or they build themselves, whatever. If you're one of the really big guys, they have their own in-house systems, of course. And then finally, where are we going? Well, we're going to what I call phase 3, where we have this integration between pricing. Pricing is not just a financial thing. It's a super active part of operations and marketing. We have advanced integrated analytics, which means that the program is, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with machine learning and artificial intelligence, but the program it's a live mechanism. It is constantly monitoring what is going on. It's not just a rule-based system. Ahmed will talk a lot more about this when we get to that. Every price becomes a test, meaning that you are now, and we're not there yet. I don't think we're quite there yet, but some industries are really, the closer you can get to your customer, of course, the more customer information you have, the more accurate you can get in your price setting. So that's really where we want to go with this. Oops. Okay, so where are we today? Right now I feel I'm almost like I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys should know, everybody should come up and actually run this slide, I think. Rapidly growing industry, right? We have increased prices. I got one question for you. When do you think it is enough? What do I mean by that? When have we reached the peak of building new facilities?
On the bank stuff.
Nobody knows, right? I think the answer to it is, Peter, depends on where I am. Right? We definitely all know that there are certain areas in the country right now that are vastly overbuilt. And there are others that are not overbuilt. Unfortunately, you guys are not in the same situation. I'll hurry up now, I promise. You guys are not in the same situation. We have a customer in Scandinavia where, when we took them over, they were at about 70% occupancy across the board, 3 countries. It's funny there, every time they build a new facility, it's the same as increasing the awareness of self-storage. So there you can really keep going because they're at a completely different level. It's much difficult here, or much different here. There's a broad range of customers, right? And I think the survey that we just did a little while ago will show you that. Not everybody's willing to pay the same. We got to know that. And then on top of that, you have thousands of different products out there that you need to manage and set the price to. So, see, already I'm getting tired just thinking about this. And you try to do this manually? Highly seasonality, I covered that a little bit. We have tons of different promotions, and you don't know how long customers are going to stay, right? It's not like, at least in the apartment industry, people sign a 12-month contract. You have no idea. Some of you guys know a lot more about this than I do. But a lot of people think, what do they think they're normally going to stay? What's the average? What do they say? nationwide. What do they think is the length of stay is when they move in? How many months?
6 months to a year.
6 months? Yeah. Do they stay longer or shorter normally? They stay longer. Right? So we got to know this. We got to take that into account when we do the pricing for it. So we need to price differently. Not just, I'm going to price all my 10 by 10s at this. Because I can see on the website that, I can't remember the name of that company again, but they put their price at this. Well, that might be 3 of the units, right, that's available that's priced at that. So I've got to be able to differentiate my pricing all the time. And as I said, it ain't easy, so I'm happy that I don't have to cover the next couple of slides about this. So with that,
Thank you.
I'll leave it up to the brain.
Do you want to know the result of the barber
Yes.
example? Let's do that now. First. So I'll switch real quick and then switch back, okay?
Right, perfect.
What do we have there?
Maybe on that side.
On this side? Yep. All right.
Should pop up. Just hit cancel on that. Yes.
So what I did there is real quick. So the when I listed female, oops, it went too small. Female versus male. So the willingness to pay for females were $146 in average. And for males, it was $43. So that's kind of understandable. You see some males say $0, and also some females say $0. I'm assuming that they're not going to the barber shop, so they don't want to pay anything. But this is a good example on the, customers are not all the same. Now, if you assume that this business is, let's say you're in that island and you have to have a haircut monthly, and I'm a barber shop, so knowing this information, well, I will do a customer segmentation, right? We'll charge, haircut for women differently than men, and I typically do that. Maybe, it's obvious that they're willing to pay more, right? That's one, high-level conclusion, but you need to maybe even get even more granular. So what I did is I run through a quick model. So put everything in there. So if I'm a barber shop there, so it's smaller here. So what this basically shows is that this is all customers by all population. Let's say you're all in there. And then if I'm charging, let's say $100, anybody below that is not gonna take it. They're gonna start cutting their hair. But anybody above will start cutting hair in my shop. So what will be the revenue I will charge? What will be the price I should be charging in that shop? Because I'm the only one, right? There's no competition, nothing. In that case, what it ends up is $200. Because $200 and above, I get less customers. It's okay, but there's some that are willing to pay that much. And I'm actually making $1,600 a month. And I'm doing less work. Now, if I charge, let's say, $0, everybody will come. I'll do a lot more work. Obviously, that's not a smart thing to do. If I charge $20 or so, I guess next one was probably a, let me see. That's okay. If I, no, I just wanna, yeah. Next one was $15. So if I charge $15, I'll get everybody except the ones that pay $0. I'll make $600 a month. But I'll be cutting a lot of hairs. So as you can imagine, if I start increasing it, I'll get less and less customers. But there's a point here that is optimal. So revenue management is all about understanding who you're serving, what their willingness to pay is, and then price to them. Now, this is always not as easy as this simplified example, but you get the concept. So there's a segmentation to it. Not everybody is the same. There are population that is willing to pay more than the others. So you want to maybe figure that out for your facilities to see, all right, maybe one facility is in an area where average housing price is $1 million or up. The other is average housing price is $100,000. Well, they're not going to act the same way. So you got to price to that market. So this is just an example where demographic do matter in pricing. Okay. So with that, let me switch back to the presentation. So essentially, problem we're trying to solve is really, so we're getting someone in, and we don't know how long they're going to stay. And this is essentially the blue line is the market rate. This is what a particular customer paid. So we want to decide on what price do we want to get them in, and how do I increase, when do I increase their prices and how much. So that's kind of the decision that needs to be made. But it's a very difficult problem because there are a lot of unknowns. A lot of unknowns are, what kind of street rate, what kind of web rate, what kind of size or feature difference should I have for each of my each of my units. When do I drop the rate? When do I increase the rate? What promotion do I give? There are all kinds of, what kind of length of stay do I expect? And what kind of competition might move rates. So this is a lot more dynamic than just a simplified example we had. Even in the barbershop example, as soon as you got the second barbershop and third barbershop, things get more complicated. Because you can't just charge $250 and make money, because market is going to go down in some sense. So similar concept here, but the idea is though the same, in that really it's all about getting close to understanding customer and pricing to that. So one of the uncertainties is length of stay, and we talked about this. In some say 6 to 10 months, but in fact, in general, half of the customers move out within 6 months. So there are those that actually, you can see here, the 12, almost 25% moves out within 2 months. And this is kind of a national average in the US at least. This is how it looks like. But there's those that actually stay 49 months or more, and average length of stay is 6 years for them. But you don't know if they're going to do that at the time that they're booking. So a lot of unknowns here. So it's very hard to do, how do I, what price do I give? If I know that they're going to stay 6 years, well, I can give them for free for the next 6 months. Well, if I do that, I'm going to get a lot of 6 months here, and I'm going to serve it, so that's not a good balance, right? So there's all kinds of unknowns in there. So typically what people do, because this is a very difficult problem, what people do is, they use, gut-based decision making. Reason is that a lot of time when things are complex, we just, humans are very good at, estimating, what to do. You're not gonna, you have to put a price out there, and then you just either look at the average market rate, or say, hey, this has been how the price has been, and then we'll put it that way. Essentially, what we call that is a human forecast. Basically, it ties to the even by day or week changes, or it's tied to the human that is making the decision. And the other is, because this is complex, we see a lot of companies that are not doing revenue management, they don't change prices as often as they should. Sometimes you see a fixed street rate for 2 months, 3 months. And they don't even move it up or down. They give some promotions here and there, but it's fixed. But today's world, especially on self-storage, it's fairly dynamic right now. REITs are changing prices daily, sometimes more than once a day. When they move prices like that, and you're just constant, it doesn't mean you're not changing price. In fact, relative price, your price relative to everybody else is changing because you're fixed, but that's not necessarily means that you're fixed, because price is a very relative concept. And people do compare to their websites and all that, and then they make a decision whether they will come to you or not. If the competition changed the price and dropped it, they may not coming to you, and you don't even know why. But, oh, we say, oh, my price has been fixed. Well, your price has been, the market is not fixed, right? The other is some use technology. You know, they have some data vendors that has this ability to have occupancy as a trigger to change prices up and down. And this is another. It's more dynamic, but it's what we call backward looking. It's basically looking at, you know, today's occupancy and make a decision on it. And that may not be the best way. And there are some circumstances, and I'll go through that a little bit to illustrate why not. Or if you get more sophisticated, you can use some type of a competitive weights and say, okay, I have 3 competitors, I shop, or I use StoreTrack or some other scrapers. And then I say, you know what, I'm going to take an average rate of the competitors, and then that's how I'm going to price. I mean, it's you pricing to the market, but even that is essentially saying I'm going to delegate my pricing responsibility to competition in some sense. And when you do that, you know, if they're doing the same thing as you're doing, or how do you know they're good pricers? Then that may not be the best way in many circumstances. It depends on how much availability you have, whether you need to drop or not, whether you should be increasing or not, what kind of demand you're expecting, and all of that is missing in there if you just do that. And you know, what we see is here is that, okay, we look at a particular month, oh, I got a great move-in, my occupancy improved, so that's great, let me raise my rate. And if I have a bad move-ins and a lot of move-outs, then I start dropping rates. So it's kind of a constant rent occupancy seesaw problem that many companies dealing with. What we call a reactive pricing here, mostly. You look after the fact and say, oh, okay, I need people, I just drop the rate or increase the rate, you know, and that's typically what happens. And essentially, you leave a lot of money on the table by this kind of practices. So what the revenue management really does is, you know, creating a consistency from your available data to position your rate so that it kind of calibrates to the market conditions, so you don't have to be reactive unnecessarily. Do we have time for all of this? All right. So we'll play another game here real quick. So let's say you're offered 2 types of game. One is basically we toss a coin, and if heads comes up, you get $100. Otherwise, if it tails, you get $0. The second game is, it's not really a game, you get $40 for sure. So which one would you take? So who will take A? Right? Who will take B? All right, almost half and half. So for those that get B, really is they want to get the sure thing, right? But let me ask this question. It's the same problem, but if we increase that to this number, flip a coin, you get $10 million. Otherwise 0. Flip a coin. Without playing the game, you get a $4 million. Which one would you take?
B.
Who will take A? These guys are risk takers still. Who will take B? I mean, seriously, if you really come to the point somebody's handing you $4 million, would you play that game? Actually, I'll flip that question. The flipping that question is, let's say you have to pay me $4 million now. That's one option. Or we flip a coin, you either pay me $10 million or nothing. Which one would you take then? For those that say, I want to play A. You still will take A?
Either.
You're losing. You pay me $4 million now. That's one option. Or we flip a coin, you either pay me $10 million or 0. It's the same problem.
Now
It's
we're
the
going to
same
see who
problem.
has money in this room.
Well, so it gives you a sense that the reason I'm putting these examples here is that, and let's say you try same game that we talked before 100 times, then which one would you choose? So who will choose B? They're still, but if you really try 100 times, then you're guaranteed to get $50 in average here. But if you try once, then the risk is higher. Point of all this is that we humans are very biased in general. So when you have a manually making pricing decisions, you always favor the sure thing. If somebody wants to come and say, I'll pay you $50 for your unit, but you think it should be 70, you're afraid to quote the 70. Well, I mean, you're afraid to quote the 70 because somebody's already coming with a $50 offer. So the human are more afraid to lose what they got. That's why that loss question, which is the 4 million losing versus that one, mostly you just want to flip the coin hoping that you will get to zero. But that's not optimal. You may actually lose 10 million there. But still, loss aversion is a very major human bias that we have. We don't want to lose what we have. And also we're afraid to take risks, typically. Some of us are not, but we're afraid to take risks. Because of that, when you have this manual pricing, it's guaranteed that you're going to be suboptimal. So through revenue management, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove that. A few things on the human forecasts. Humans are really good at knowing what's important. They can actually list the factors that are, okay, competition is important, available supply is important, season is important. They can list it, but they don't know how to forecast from it. We're really bad at it if you just do it manually. There are several biases. One of them I want to mention is the anchoring effect. Well, actually, gambler fallacy is that a lot of times, if you ever, when you go to Vegas and you see a roulette table, you see 4 blacks came, you have a tendency to put on the red, saying, "Oh, red must come down because four black came." But that's wrong because this is independent from each other, and if you do that, there's no guarantee that your red is going to come, right? I mean, but people have that sense that, okay, our red must be coming because 4 in a row, the black came. The other is anchoring effect. So this is actually very important. It relates to what people call also value pricing. Is the people are there's a lot of research on it. If you like, I can tell you a couple of books to read on this if you enjoy reading it. One is called, you may hear that, Predictably Irrational. It's a very good book. MIT professor wrote it. How people are completely making irrational decisions. And he's actually talking about anchoring effect, where they actually made a random numbers, things like, okay, write your social security number first, last 2 digits of your social security number first, and then estimate what the cost of, let's say, something to be. And what they find is that the last 2 digits of social security number that they have is very correlated to whatever number they quoted. So what I'm trying to say is that the first number you see, or first number that, let's say you're about to buy a self-storage unit, and you went to the website and you see a price and you liked it, you want to buy it. Once you have that is your anchor point. It's hard to move from that very significantly. Sometimes they claim, okay, you can charge another 40%, 50% more. And many times conversion will be extremely low. And this is actually a very well-established concept. There's another book called Fast and Slow Thinking by a gentleman called Kahneman. He won actually Nobel Prize in 2002 on this kind of research. So we are very much anchored to the first thing we see. So that's why when it comes to the pricing, you want to be very careful on how you want to anchor your customers. Also, we have a tendency to rely on small samples, meaning how many times you heard that, okay, yeah, I've seen this once and it was that way, and then we easily generalize it and say, okay, that must be that, this is going to repeat, without having a large sample size. And I'll skip that. And again, in general, we want to understand or read the data in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, and we have that bias always. So essentially, manual pricing is a guarantee to, if you have one facility and you're really careful about, at least you have a method that you kind of repeat all the time, and you're consistent, you might be okay. But still, you'll be biased one way versus another. Even your mood swings, and then you make a different decision about your pricing. And about everything else as well. I mean, it's really, you're very biased. So what is revenue management? You know, revenue management really is completely data-driven. Again, data, as Peter mentioned at the beginning, data and facts are not necessarily the same thing. We don't currently, as much as technology we have, as much as we came a long way in terms of collecting data, but still we don't have the perfect data. We still have partial data. There's so much out there that some of them are impossible to collect. You know, how do you know customers' willingness to pay? We did a test at the beginning here that says, you know, what are you willing to pay? Even you wrote it. When it comes to reality, that number might be different. You might be actually, behaving completely differently. You may not even know yourself, even when you write that number. So, estimating, getting the data is very, very difficult. Despite that, there's a lot of also data out there. You have a lot of trends available. You have seasonality. You have a lot of moving data, a lot of rent data. And you can find really interesting trends in your current existing data that will actually enhance you far better than the manual process. It's still not perfect, but it's gonna really improve your decision-making process if you use the data. But the key is we got to have the a pricing data model. There's also some implications around this where I know Jim and I talked about this a lot. The question is, there are vendors out there that host your data and all that. Do you really own your data is another question. Do you have the ownership? Can you, in the future, use your own data the way you want it? So you want to probably pay attention to that to some level as well. Because data is the currency of the 21st century now, and it becomes like an oil. In the future, especially if your company is growing and you have big ambitions and you're planning on growing, then the data that you have will become a massive commodity, and you want to be able to use that properly. And you want to have the ability to use that also, because the agreements you're making with your data vendors, you want to watch to see whether you really own it or they own it. The other aspect is there's always a forecasting. We talked about price sensitivity, and I gave you an example of it. So essentially, in our example, $43 for male versus $140, was it $140, $43, $41 for female, almost 3 times more. Without segmentation, you can't catch this difference. And you may have the same, maybe your commercial customers are completely different in terms of price response than individual customers. People that are staying a lot longer with you might be a lot less sensitive to rate increases than people that are staying less. So there are a lot of trends, and data hides a lot of information that you can actually take advantage of if you understand the customers' preferences every day. And that's really what part of every revenue management system has form of market segmentation. Again, we talked about a facility being in an expensive neighborhood versus a not so expensive neighborhood. Or student properties are completely have a different patterns that you can monitor and respond appropriately. Properties that are in California versus Florida versus Chicago versus rural area versus metropolitan areas, these are all different, completely different. And you can't have one policy apply everywhere. And that's why it requires some help from computers, and that's really what the revenue management is about. And also demand forecasting. This is critical, and I'll give an example on it. Is really your prices, you set the price. Price is a control variable. Basically, you're controlling your price, but you hope that what's coming, meaning all the customers that are coming will embrace that price. So you're making a decision about future, not about the past. What just happened may not be relevant to what's about to happen in some sense. So you need to be able to forecast what's happening. A good example is, especially on student properties, and I'll show the examples there, is where move-ins are in particular months very strong, and move-outs are in particular months very strong. You've got to be able to see that, forecast that, and price to that. If you just look backwards just on occupancy, you'll make wrong decisions. So you got to look forward. And then obviously the goal is to optimize revenue. So let's give an example here. So if you have a drive-up unit with 100 units, just to simplify the problem here, and currently you have 93 occupied, and regular price is, let's say, $100. Would you increase the price, stay the same, or decrease the price? Who will increase the price in this scenario? Right? Who will drop it? So nobody will drop it, everybody will increase it. Who will stay the same? So now, in this case, you have a high occupancy situation, and then you raise the price, let's say, to $108. You only got 3 rentals. You have 12 people vacated in 30 days, and you ended up with 84% occupancy. Now you're making about $8,424 in place rent a month. In that scenario, you raise the rate. Now, what if I tell you that I can actually forecast that I'm going to have 12 units move out in 30 days? And I can also forecast that when I drop rate, I'll get more move-ins. So if you predict that, and in that scenario, we expect vacates and we lower the price. Now when I lower the price to $96, I get 10 rentals instead of 3. So this is really about price sensitivity estimation. And if I can estimate that and say customers are price sensitive, if I drop to 96, I'll get 10. If I'm forecasting it, then I position my rate to 96. I still have the 12 vacates, just like here. But now I ended up with 91% occupied, and I'm making more money, $9,060 in place rent, just by forecasting appropriately. So this essentially will give you a 7.6% additional revenue. And I'll tell you, this is not uncommon. Sometimes in some properties, we see 20, 30% revenue lift from where they were before by applying this kind of techniques. 15%. Some are not that high, but we see some of them extraordinarily high, expected high revenue. We achieve very high revenue just by using demand forecasting. Okay. I mean, here's the student properties, and this is a set of student properties for. We basically put together this small size unit, 150 square foot or less, where students are interested. I mean, you can clearly see here, Macons, you see a lot of move-ins, and this is the move-outs, the orange. And you can estimate this. And then when you have this, and then I'm sitting in April, my occupancy might be low, but I'm going to have a tsunami of move-ins. But I know that they stay short. But still, I'm going to have this. What do I do? And that's really what the revenue management answers that say, hey, before season starts, reservation starts, you got to start raising rates. Otherwise, they're going to fill it very quickly. In fact, another approach here is even saving units for other customers that might come in summer. Because other customers' length of stay is much longer than students. And if you let students just continue to book it, they're going to fill it, and you'll have no space to book for the other customers. That means maybe saving some units, 5, 10 units, or maybe there's an optimization about it. These airlines do this. We do that as well. Let's say, look, for these units, save 10 units. For these units, save 11 units. For these, save 20 units. Post-student season. You still will have summer demand. Their length of stay is much longer than student demand. But you still like the student demand because they fill it and you get a good occupancy. You don't want to lose them out, and they can pay more, you know, if you actually push it. I've seen actually, which is kind of surprising, I've seen companies giving 1 month and 2 months off, even during student season. It's kind of crazy because they only stay 3 months. And in fact, if you look at it, this is a distribution of customers staying by month. So if you look at the January, this is basically chance of move out within 6 months. So for January arrivals, it's about 40% of them move out within 6 months. But if you look at the May, April arrivals, it goes up to 90% move out within 6 months. So what does that tell you is that this is a completely different demand than other months in a student property. But hey, this is customer segmentation also, just like we talked about at the beginning on the haircut example. It relates to that. And you can actually find data, you already have this data. You already have move-in, move-out data and length to stay to create different strategies by month alone for a student property. And you'll make more money just by doing that. And forget about an automated software system or anything like that. But I know some of you probably have that already, that kind of sense already, and you're probably manually doing something about it, but still, these are really some trends that you can take advantage of and use it. The other, I want to also point out that not every competitive, a lot of people talk about new supply coming in, competitive pressure is there and all that. But there are many cases where we did a lot of analysis related to, when there's a competitive, we look at like a history of competitive prices versus our own rates, and then also look at our own demand that comes in. And when we correlate that, we found that, about 32% of the competitors were irrelevant, meaning they changed prices but didn't affect our own demand. There's some that are very relevant, like about 26% is highly relevant, so I can't ignore them, and it affects my own demand. And there are others that are in between. So not every competitor has similar impact on your demand. It depends on the location, it depends on which competitor we're looking at. And we looked at a 3-mile radius here. For a very large company, and this is kind of the, actually multiple companies, and this is kind of the summary that we found, that a lot of times they're irrelevant. So understanding which one is really impacting you and how to respond to it is, it's very hard to do it manually. You'll make more mistake by just having one policy for all than actually not doing anything. It's probably better than just following them. Okay? Hopefully this gives you a couple of sense of the trends you can kind of explore and use that to your advantage. Really quick, this is the another slide we have. We have about 5 minutes?
You have about 5 minutes.
Right, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is a typical revenue management application that goes through a data phase, there's a science phase, and there's also a configuration and deployment phase. I want to point out that this is not only the math, meaning this is not only data-driven and we stop there. You still, as a human being, this is a tool. Just like you're using Excel, it's a tool. You still have to look at it and help the system in some circumstances. If the system doesn't have the data, remember we say facts and data are different. Facts are broader than data. Data is kind of a subset, if you can collect it, subset of data. Is there circumstances where the system doesn't have the information? System basically uses history and try to extract. But if there is a brand new competitor that you never had and you're sharing a driveway and they're doing a crazy promotion, system doesn't know about it. That means you gotta help. Or maybe driveway is blocked and people can't get to your facility. You won't get any move-in. This is not a pricing problem. There are other problems in there. So facts are. So you still, as a human, you still need to help, you still need to be part of it, but essentially with the tool though, you start from a better place. much better position than you start from nothing and doing manual pricing. So that's kind of the idea. And with that, I'm gonna let Peter finish it up. Thank you.
Thank you. This is not easy, is it? Let me cover one of the toughest parts actually in this, because as I said, math doesn't do this alone. All depending on where you are today and where you want to go. There's one other thing, and Jim and I talked about that earlier, that you also have to take into consideration, and I call it change management. Because change is difficult, right? A lot of people, we don't like change. Actually, there's surveys out there that show that more than 70% of all see, that's the English part of it. Organizational change initiative, 70% of them fail. Because they're not planned for whatever. So, this is never going to work in an organization. There might be some operational people here today that go, man, I want this. This is great. If we don't get C-level buy-in, and I mean, I'm really tough on that when we talk to companies, forget it. This has to be supported all the way from the top. It's not like buying, and no disrespect to QuickBooks, because I'm sure it's a good program, but this is there's a lot more to it, because it is a lot more than the math and the data. There's going to be an acceptance in the organization is that to make revenue management successful, it has to be center-led. Revenue management is all about control. So if we have an organization today where the field is used to that they can make any kind of decision they want as long as they just fill it up, we're going to need to talk to people. We're going to make some decisions here with that. And it starts with the C-level suite. I've talked to people over the years who look upon, oh, let's get this revenue management project. Revenue management is not a project that starts one day and ends another day. It's a business discipline. It never stops. So we gotta have that in there. Pricing capabilities, it has something to do with, one thing is that you might set up a strategy for how you want to change prices, but you're actually going to be able to put it into the field. You got to make sure that it actually shows up on your website. We got to train our sales force to accept that. You know, one of the biggest enemies against revenue management sometimes is occupancy-based bonus systems. Because what is a store manager who is 100% based on occupancy bonus? What do you think he's going to say when you raise the price? He ain't going to like it. So we got to work with you guys and talk about bonus systems also, because all these things has to fit in together. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. We got to train our salespeople on value selling, right? It's not about the one, oh, I'm so glad you walked through the doors today because we give 50% off 3 months. And then, I know, Sarah, you do it. You guys do it a lot when you train people, right? It's about, what are you looking for? How long do you think you're going to stay? Or Daddy's paying. Right? So we have to train our salespeople that this is not about selling discounts and promotions. I'm not saying we don't have discounts and promotions, but I've seen companies that we have started working with that we walk through the door, they have 15 different promotions available. If you think their sales force is happy or unhappy? We're unhappy. So we got to cut it down. We got to make that happen. And then finally, we got to have confidence in it. You know, Henry Ford used to say, whether you think you can do it or you can't, you're right. So we got to believe in it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Because really, and this is my last before we go to Q&A, price is a number. And setting a price is an event. But optimal pricing is a journey. So welcome to the pricing revolution. And with that, we'll open up for questions and discussions. Go ahead.
Can y'all share
come up.
whatever you can about sort of the A/B testing you guys did for one of the big REITs? Because I think as a group of mostly small owners here, we're always competing against the REITs, and we know that those guys have, you know, tools and money and things that are not available to us or haven't traditionally been available to us. And so, that, you know.
So we basically did a very large REIT. We did a test. They already had a revenue management system, internal revenue management system. So we, what they were missing was the forecasting piece, and they wanted to test to see whether this was helpful, just on the new customer pricing aspect of it. So we had 110 pairs of stores in similar markets, similar unit mix, kind of predetermined upfront. Just like when you do on a clinical trial, they use us for, we randomly selected which one we should use, and there was a control store that we compare with. And we run this over 6-month period, and after, in fact, 4 months or so, revenue uplift we gave them converged to about 4%. So we gave them about 4% revenue uplift, and actually they're using us ever since. Just on new customer pricing. So the existing customer piece adds another, 4 to 5%. But after doing that test for an extended period, there were lots of data. Again, 110 store pairs. You have about 220 stores essentially were involved with this, and we found about 4.1% revenue.
Over what their revenue management system
over what their revenue management system were doing in their properties. Again, nice thing about this was it was on the same time period. It was done in parallel. It wasn't that, okay, last year was different than this year kind of thing. We in fact compare how they were faring with each other before the pilot and then after. And then we kind of measure the impact of using the application. That way. So that's one type of test. There are a bunch of other tests we do, but that's one of the major price testing we did with our application.
Can you also talk about, because I think we've talked a little bit about the actual street rate or web rate, but for existing tenants and rent raises and things like that, how does an application like this work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because it sounds like we're talking about a lot of pricing for new customers, but for me, revenue management is about 3 things really. It's about pricing in stabilized stores for new move-ins and for existing customers, and then it is pricing for lease-up. Because lease-ups are a completely different animal. We all know that, right? There's some completely different algorithms that come into play when you talk about lease. I will get back to your question, I promise. When you talk about lease-up stores, right? First of all, we don't have very much data, so they need a lot more babysitting. They're going to be a lot more volatile, et cetera, et cetera. Existing customers, yes, I mean, that is equally important because, again, here, as I mentioned it, you have different behaviors. We've done a lot of surveys on this. There's a huge move-out sensitivity difference between somebody who's been with you for 6 months and somebody who's been with you for 3 years, for instance. So you've got to take that into consideration, right? There's a difference on when did they move in? Did they move in during low season? Did they move in during high season? What's the street rate right now? And again here, different companies have different policies here. The worst thing about it is, and I'm going back to change management. I have one client who complained like crazy when we did it. Because he said, we have a lot more complaints from people than we used to have. We have more people moving out than we've ever seen before. And I looked at him and said, are you making more money? Yes, I am. Because the 90% of the ones who doesn't complain, who doesn't move out, is paying a lot more than I would have raised them because I'm afraid of the 10% who's going to complain. We got to talk to the store managers, right? We're doing some changes here, Bill. But I'm going to let you know up front that you're probably going to hear more complaints than you're used to. But at the end of the day, because we changed your bonus system, by the way, so it's all about revenue now, you will make more money. Are you all right with that? As long as you don't raise my brother-in-law, I'm okay. No, that's not in Georgia, sorry, that's somewhere else that happened. So I apologize for that. But that's, yes, so existing customers are definitely something that you have to, I would say that that's a lot of money in existing customers. Even if you don't get a revenue management system, an advanced one, don't look at everybody the same way. And I'm sure that a lot of you guys do. But just, and take that, be willing to take that risk of a few more complaints than you're used to. Because it's a lot of money hidden in complaints. Did that answer your question too? Well, with that, I think we're done. And thank you very much for your attention today. Have a great day.
Great to meet you today. Great group. Anytime you have questions, anybody about anything. Good job. Good job. Very, very.